Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Afterlife podcast. This is your host, Pooja Chilukuri. I'm very excited to interview my guest today, Jamie Chupka. She is co author of the book It Went Without Saying. It's her journey from addiction to recovery. She just celebrated 21 years clean on the 8th of October. Jamie is a certified addiction professional in Florida and licensed in the state of New York as well. She works at Manatee County Jail as a discharge planner. Jamie loves helping people and seeing them change and grow. Thank you so much for taking your time to be on this show, Jamie.
Oh, thank you. It's a privilege and an honor.
And I hope I said your last name right.
You did.
Okay, good. So we nailed that one. So, Jamie, I really appreciate you telling your story today because I know sometimes it could be very difficult, especially if there's been some trauma or, difficult things. So, first of all, I want to just say thank you for your courage for doing this. I read your book. I mean, you co-authored it with both your parents. It's so well written, Jamie, and also so honest. There were moments that did make me cry. I can't lie. And then there were moments that were hard to read only because you feel so deeply. I'm a parent too, right? So I was just putting my teenage daughter there where you were years ago. And so very relatable, whether or not a family has been through addiction. I really wanted to bring Jamie's story out here today because in so many ways, it's a story of death and resurrection. It's a story of grief. It's a story of overcoming. And Jamie, without wasting any more time, I'm going to let you tell it. So please walk us through your journey.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much again for having me. And it's an honor. And I don't say that lightly. It's truly an honor. Boy, it's funny because as you said, I just celebrated 21 years. And sometimes I feel like the addiction, the drug addiction is so far removed from me. But there are times when it feels like it's so close, especially this past year, which I'll get to, in a little bit. But, I have to say that growing up, I grew up in a family full of love. I was just surrounded by love. I was taught many different spiritual and religious beliefs. My parents brought me to ashrams. We went to church. I went to synagogues with a friend of mine. We really embraced a lot of different beliefs, and I appreciated that, and I still do. For my parents for instilling me with those values, and I was brought up with values of love, and but I remember feeling different. I would say in about second grade was the first time that I felt different. It was the first time that I used the drug comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And where I compared myself to other people. And I remember we had to take a test. And this test showed whether or not you got into the advanced program or the not advanced program. And everyone on the block got into the advanced program except for me. And I, from that moment on, took the belief that I was stupid, and I made it my own. And I created this narrative and ran with it for most of my life, that I was not worthy. I was not good enough. I was not smart enough. And I took a lot of my worthiness and I took it externally. I created that, that if it was made me feel worthy on the outside, then maybe I would feel worthy on the inside. And at 14, to skip ahead, at 14, I was in high school, started my freshman year of high school, and I drank for the first time. And I can remember feeling like, I am at home. I feel like I belong somewhere. I feel like I could be someone that I wanted to be. I feel like I fit in. I feel like I belonged. I feel like I was a whole person, and everyone, well, everyone I say around me was doing it, but it was mostly, the people that I hung out with. It was the people that I chose in my life that were all drinking and partying, and that's what we did. And my addiction to alcohol progressed so rapidly that by the time I was 18, looking at it clinically now, I could say I was an alcoholic. By 18, I could diagnose if I were to diagnose myself, I would say I was an alcoholic. Um, and still kind of going through that, that phase of, not phase, but that journey of not loving who I was, and my parents, actually, my mother wrote me a letter, and we communicated a lot through letters, my parents and I. It was just sort of the best way that we could communicate. My mother was Italian, and she grew up very animated and vocal. My father, if he got angry with you, he would not speak to you. So letters was a really nice way for us to communicate, when people actually wrote, hand wrote letters, and even if we lived in the same house, we wrote letters to each other. And my mother wrote this letter, and it said, "You're going down a very long, dark path, and we hope that you choose the light. And we're here for you, knowing we're here for you. We want you to know that we love you, and we will love you to the light when and if you're ready." But I wasn't ready. I still was looking for that external validation, that to fill that void inside of me, because I had this void deep down inside of me. And I wanted to fill it with anything to make me feel better, whether it was men or alcohol. At the time, I was dabbling in drugs, but I hadn't really found a drug of choice at that time. Until I was 20, and then I chose careers that kind of reinforced my addiction, like bartending. It was like, oh, this is wonderful. I can drink, and I can get the accolades of being a good bartender. And I was a good bartender. I was a really good bartender. I was personable, but I enjoyed the power. I enjoyed the ability to drink and continue to drink, and it was quote normal, because that's who I surrounded myself with. And I didn't really get involved in harder drugs until I was 26. I tried my first drug, cocaine, and that brought me down quickly. And I, at that time, was bartending still, and was working in a bar where people just were, I want to say it was almost like they were consumed by alcohol. It was really the lifestyle. And there's a saying in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous that says, if the drugs don't kill you, the lifestyle will. And it was all consuming, because it was in Myrtle Beach. So I had moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So it was really a party town. A lot of the soldiers would come from Camp Lejeune, and they would come down and drink. And so it was a really party place. And but at that point, on September 3rd, I was looking for cocaine, and I was pulled up to a gas station, and there was a man on the phone. And in hindsight now, I knew he was a predator. I knew there was something in me that said, this man is a predator. But the drugs pulled me so strongly. They had such a grip on me that I said, well, at least I'll try to get my drugs, you know?
Mhm.
So I pulled in, I asked him for drugs. He brought me deep into the woods, and I didn't know where I was, and I had been drinking.
Mhm.
So I said, well, and he kept calling for this guy, Mario. And he wound up raping me at knife point, telling me he was going to kill me. I remember it was about 4:27 in the morning, because he pulled up to a gate and he said, stay here. And if you call the police or if you take off, I'm going to kill you. And I waited until it was 4:29, and I said, I'm out of here. And I drove and I called a friend, and they took me to the hospital, where I did have a rape kit done. But the police came the next day, and I'll never forget, the detective said, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Those were his words. And I called my parents, and they came to pick me up. And my father describes it as, when he picked me up, I was about 90 pounds at the time. And he said, I picked my daughter up and she was skin and bones, and there was no soul. It was just
Wow.
skin and bones, you know? And I was really deep in the addiction then. And I would say probably at that point, clinically, well, after that, I was so consumed by the trauma. I couldn't go outside. I couldn't go into bathrooms by myself. Everywhere I looked, I thought I saw the perpetrator. I thought, you know, he was going to still come find me and kill me. But I came back to New York, and I decided that I was going to bartend again, you know, and try to bartend again. And my friend said to me later, she said, I can't believe you had no right to be in a bar. You had no right to be in a bar. And once again, I was looking for cocaine, and someone had crack. And I said, well, let's try it. And the first time I tried it, I didn't like it. The second time, it was really ultimately my drug of choice. And that brought me to my knees. I mean, any ounce of my morals and values slowly slipped away. I mean, they had been slipping away prior to that, but they were really depleted at that point. That any little bit of self-esteem or self-respect or value, you know, for myself was gone, was just gone. All I cared about, like they say in Narcotics Anonymous, was the ways and means to get more. That's what I wanted, more and more and more. And I had tried to get, I had finally brought myself, I wound up getting a DUI in 2 states. I realized eventually that I had a problem. You know, of course, everyone knew except for me. Well, I did know, but I just didn't want to acknowledge it. And I said, you know, I'll try to get some help. And I went into rehab, into an outpatient clinic first. And I was still searching for something, although the I want to say it was really the grace of my higher power that helped me, the grip of addiction loosen for me. Because I had tried everything. In between that, I'm missing an important part of the story. In between that, I had gotten so depressed that I took a bottle of pills. tried to end my own life on two separate occasions. One of which I was with my now daughter's father, and he said, "You'll be all right. You'll be all right." And a friend of mine called the police. I was so angry at her for calling the police on me that I was just furious that she could do such a thing. I mean, how dare her try to save my life, And I went to an inpatient psychiatric hospital. And at the time, that's where I belonged. And they would not release me until I went into a rehab. And that was a scary place. That was a very scary place. However, I met friends, people that I really connected with, and of course they were dosing me up with Ativan because I was suffering from panic attacks. And so I was like, oh, I love it here, And finally a nurse stopped me and said, "Do you have any idea where you are?" She said, "I don't want to see you be a frequent flyer here. You are worthy." And my daughter's father was abusive, and he had come to the psychiatric hospital and was screaming at me. And one of the nurses said to me, "Mae West said, living a good life is the best revenge."
Wow.
And she talked me through these panic attacks. I went to rehab. I eventually, long story short, got pregnant with my daughter. And at that point, there's a saying in Narcotics Anonymous that says you have to not want to use 51% of the time, just 51% of the time. But for me, at the end of my addiction, it was about wanting to live. It was just about, I just needed that one additional percent of hope. That was it. That was it. And I found it, and when I got pregnant, I felt I was elated. I was just elated. And I was in treatment, and I was still 90 pounds. And I was saying to everyone in treatment, is my stomach getting big? And they were like, no. And I told my parents. They were not very happy because it was with my daughter's father and they weren't very fond of him. And but after I'd gone through the pregnancy, and I decided, I made a choice that I wanted to live. I wanted to live that 1% more than I wanted to die. I found that hope that we talk about. And there was there's a lot of different spiritual things that had happened along the path. At that point I was seeing my mother and I was seeing a psychiatrist, and my mother and I was pregnant, and we had gone to see the psychiatrist, and it was in Orisville, which is a small town. And there was a shrine there of a Native American warrior who her name was Katoria, and she was a saint. And we walked around the shrine, and the shrine wasn't open because it was the fall. And all of a sudden, this man opens the door for us and lets us into the shrine. And he says, "Come on in, you can come in and pray or worship or do whatever it is that you'd like." And we turned around and the man was gone, but we were in the shrine. And we came and we just prayed and meditated and kind of, it was just a beautiful moment, I think, between my mother and I, because God, I could cry talking about it. We had conflict, growing up. We kind of butted heads. And I think it was because she had such a strong personality, and her will for me to live was stronger than my own. And I think that caused her great pain. And it was difficult for us to get along, where my father kind of had the ability to hold me in the love. They both did, but my father had that ability to just sort of say, I love you no matter what. And I felt like my mom loved me, but she wanted me clean. Well, of course,
Of course.
of course.
Yeah.
But, so that moment in the shrine was just a beautiful, powerful moment between my
Mhm.
mother and I, where
Mhm.
we got to really bond and connect, and
Mhm. Yeah.
beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Your story is amazing, Jamie. I've read the book, so I've also been able to gain some perspective from both your parents through the book. But as you were talking, if you saw me making notes, I was furiously writing, making notes because I don't want to lose any piece of this. And I do want to talk about the different aspects. The first thing you said that really hit my heart, you said before the alcohol, it was the drug of comparison,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that leads me to my first question. I used to always think that if you love your child enough, if there's enough love, then it's all good, everything's always good. But there are these other, I don't want to call them forces, I don't know what to call them, these other factors that play into the psyche,
Yeah.
right? And that comparison and all those lies that made you believe that you were not good enough, that you weren't complete,
Mm.
that you needed something to complete. And I've always said substance isn't the only addiction. We're addicted to our negative thoughts.
Absolutely.
And you touched on something that's very close to my heart, the concept of self-love.
Mm.
What was that like for you? Because as I was reading the book, I realized that that was going to be a long road for you to even come to the point of loving yourself. Do you feel you're there? How was that like, that journey from that place of not feeling good enough to accepting and loving yourself?
Oh boy. I feel like, and my sponsor tells me, as long as there's breath in our body, there's work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that finally, and I would say this past year has taught me, I've learned to love myself more in this past year through a recent trauma than I've ever loved myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you
It's
know, yeah.
Yeah, that is hard though. It's like, I don't know why, even with all the people that love us. And your dad runs a forgiveness center, right?
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful, Jamie.
it really is. He's an amazing man. And
Mhm.
my mother's an amazing woman. They
Woman, yes.
really are. And he also teaches something called A Course in Miracles,
Yes.
teaches that. And they've just been, I'm just truly blessed to have them as my parents,
Mhm. Mhm.
and and if I could go kind of back to this journey of self-love, with over last year on some, I was in a relationship with a man for 8 years, up until last year. We bought a house together, which brought me, I moved to Florida, uh, and he and I bought a house together. So we were sort of tied in that sense. He was living in New York, and traveling here, in staying here in the winter. And he decided last year, and now he also has an addiction. However, not doesn't I don't believe he wants to do anything about it, although that's not my place to say, but I
Mhm.
just from my what I've seen.
Mhm.
Anyhow, he came down last year in September to help during the hurricane, and wound up drinking and uh, nearly killed me.
Wow.
He had choked me to the point where I passed out. Told me while he was choking me, "How does it feel to take your last breath? You're going to die tonight." I lost consciousness. I urinated on myself. I had petechiae, broken blood vessels in my, and there was a moment in that when at first I thought I'm going to die tonight. And then I thought, I don't want to die tonight. I don't want to die tonight. I want to live. And he stopped for a moment. And that's when I ran and grabbed my phone. And yeah.
That's frightening too, Jamie. Like, that would be very traumatic. And you just even having the thought that you want to live, that's self-love right there. Because your life is worth it, right? Yeah. That you do consider your life worth it.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I'm so sorry though that you had to go through that, because that's a tough one. That really is.
But you know what? It brought me to where I am now, where I feel worthy. I finally feel worthy of love. And that doesn't mean, because for so long I thought it was love on the outside. If I was loved on the outside, if I was loved externally, if this person loved me, if that guy loved me, if I fell in love with this guy, if this guy had money, this guy can take care of me. And, and it's about loving me loving me, my higher power loving me, the universe has my back, and that's what's so important to me today. And I just am so blessed to be where I am, that moment where I felt like I was at the brink of death has brought me to the moment of the grace of God, knowing I'm alive and feeling gratitude for the gift of life today,
Yeah. And you actually answered one of my questions before I could ask it. So that's awesome. I was going to ask you if your spiritual beliefs played into somehow your recovery journey.
Oh, yeah. 100%. 100%. So I have to say, here's an example, if I may.
Of course.
So about 13 years after being raped, my parents lost their home in a fire, and they were just, as devastated clearly as they were. The whole house didn't get destroyed. It was but a large part of the house. They were grateful, and they focused on the gratitude of the fact that they were alive and that we had each other, and that and so we focused on this gratitude. And as we were sitting in one of the houses that we were living in temporarily, I was living in a different place, but my parents were living there temporarily. I got an email from a detective, and he said, "Is this Jamie Chupka?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And he said, "This is so-and-so from the Troy Police Department. Were you a victim of a crime in South Carolina?" And I said, "Yes, I was." And he says, "Well, there's been a DNA match." And I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, there was a DNA match. They found the guy, and he was arrested. But it was that, they said, 'Would you be willing to testify?' I said, 'Yes, I would,' but it was just kind of like this circle, it's like this circle of, I don't want to say revenge, but like almost revenge,
vindication, maybe.
Vindication, that feeling of, I've come around, and there's a belief. I've always believed. My grandparents were strict Catholics. My both on both sides, but as I said earlier, my parents kind of really taught me every kind of spiritual belief that you could imagine, and allowed me the ability to kind of choose my own path. And I firmly believe that there is something greater than myself.
Yes.
I believe in angels.
Yes.
I believe in spirit guides.
Yes.
I believe that there there are no coincidences in life, that everything brings us to right where we're supposed to be. We meet who we're supposed to meet, you
Yes.
know. I listen to some spiritual teachers that I just love, and um, God, they've helped me immensely, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Jamie, I do want to point out something that I believe very deeply, and that is people that are fortunate enough to have the support and the means to heal. You have the courage to take that first step, that my life is worth it. I'm going to heal from this. I deeply believe that when the individual is healed, somehow the collective is healed. That's a
Mm,
belief I hold very dear. So I feel like it's not just Jamie, it's not just Pooja. When we're doing the work for our own healing, it's
mhm.
going to ripple out. There's just no way around that. So it's very precious to me, your story, because I do know that many people don't make it. But the ones that do in that, and not that the ones don't make it, it's nothing to their fault, because the pain, one of the things that really struck me in the book, what you say, I wanted to break out of the prison in my own mind and let go the beast.
Yes.
Right. So I understand it's not our fault when, if we want to end the pain, we just want to end the pain. I
Mhm.
get it. When I'm in pain, I want to pluck out that part of my body. So
Mhm.
when your soul is in pain, you're tempted to just pluck that out and say, I'm done.
Yeah.
But I want to applaud you for, just living your life, healing, and bringing that to others. That is precious. I do have one more question because, on this show, we also talk about grief and loss. And one of the things when I was reading your book, I thought, oh my God, did you ever, how did you overcome that? Because I know there's got to be some grief from those years that could have been different.
Oh,
And how did you sort of get out of that?
oh boy. It's, I think it goes spirituality. I honestly believe that my belief in faith and spirituality helped me immensely. I um I just experienced grief again. It kind of comes in these waves,
Mhm.
and they always say there's a saying that if it's hysterical, it's historical. So I experienced a loss last year. No, I'm sorry, 6 months ago. And the pain that I was in was so deep. And it was, looking back now, pain from, the year of September 30th of last year. It was pain of the loss of a child that I lost. It's in pain, pain from all the losses that I've experienced, and I couldn't cope. I couldn't cope. And what did I do? I reached out to a friend of mine had passed away. I reached out on his phone to a drug dealer and I
Mhm.
said, I need fentanyl. Now I've never done fentanyl. And
Yeah.
and I and he said, um, uh, are you sure? He said, okay, well, and he used these words. I don't know what they were. They were slang for drugs, And I said, I don't know what that is. I said, listen, I haven't used a drug in 21 years. And he said, oh no, Ma, I'm not going to be the one to do that to you. He said, I'm not going to. And I'm like, if that isn't higher power looking out for me, I don't know what is.
Yes.
No, and it brought me back to that wanting that 51% of the time,
Yes.
that just wanting finding that little bit of hope,
Yes.
taking that little bit of hope and not going from like the spiritual teachers that I listen to. They say you can't go from despair to happiness. It's too big of a jump. So
Yes.
I went from despair to loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
That was okay. Loneliness to um, just being okay. You know, it was a fair jump. It was a fair jump. And then I was just okay for a little while, you know, and then just being okay brought me to a little bit of gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And they say a grateful addict doesn't use. And I try to express my gratitude every day,
Yeah.
you know, because I'm just so grateful um, that I have this spirituality in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I think that that's really what helped me through the grief.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I've learned from doing this show and interviewing tons of guests. They all say the same thing, Jamie, that we are supported. It's like we have our own spirit team that's
Mhm.
rooting and cheering for us. We can't see them. Sometimes they may give us signs and we may pick up on it or we may miss it. Some of us can hear those little gentle whispers, but there's always a team that's been
Yeah.
assigned to us. But we do have to do our part of wanting the help, wanting and listening to you also. Thank you for saying what you just did, because I also don't think that healing is digital. Like there is gonna be moments where we are tempted to fall back into like our old ways of thinking or always of doing, but we're not the same person anymore. And every test shows us that. It's a celebration, really. I
Yes.
think it's a celebration that you reached out, they said no, and you were like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not
Yeah.
that person anymore, right? So to
Exactly.
me, everything is a celebration. And your a book, I don't want to give it away. Like there are so many quotes. If you can see what I've done, I've like written
Oh,
all these quotes. I just love it. I took screenshots of some parts of your book to put in my phone so that I could look back at it when I needed it. But
oh.
one of the things I got from your book is, and I wrote this down. I wrote this. I said, she's been through hell and back. And I don't like using that word, but I didn't have another description for it. So thank you so much for your honesty and, just sharing. If people wanted to buy your book or get in touch with you, I'm going to include all the links. Is the best way to do that on Amazon or on your website?
Website. The website is the best way to do it. Absolutely.
Okay, so I will make sure that we have all your links, Jamie, that people can find you. And I really appreciate you taking your time this morning to talk to me. Thank you.
Oh, thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Really, it was my pleasure and honor.
Thank you, Jamie.